All right, Dennis, I'd say we can start there now whenever you're ready to go.
We'll fire away. So,
Yep.
thank you, Niamh. Thanks for having me on. So, Dennis Howard is my own name. I suppose I was a vet in practice for 17 years and I joined Munster Bovine back in 2018. So, my role there then is the company vet and technical manager. So, work a lot with the AI technicians and the training and monitoring side of the house. And we have a herd health program as well. So, I'd work a good bit in that as well. Uh, No, so I just said I'd throw up this slide for a bit of context about, I suppose, about who we are. So that's, I suppose, the region we cover in Munster and Galway there. And our main services are the AI technician service, semen sales, milk recording, the herd health program that I mentioned, and we have a farm software app, then Farm Ops. And up the northern half of the country, then a very similar country. You could call them a sister company, really, Progressive Genetics. So similar services, and we collaborate quite closely because we actually own 50/50 own in this company called the National Cattle Breeding Centre. So they actually run the breeding program, buy the bulls, select the bulls, run the bull studs, and run the semen lab. And I suppose we're farmer owned, or co-op owned really, which is farmer owned. So Dairygold, Kerry, and the West Cork co-ops. So they'd be our shareholders. And so my brief tonight was to talk about fertility, and I'll try and bear in mind the time of year we have, and maybe focus on some of the things we can be doing now to make sure we have a good breeding season later on. But again, just for context, like I suppose our systems, by and large, in Ireland are grass-based systems. I know there's variation. You might have a little bit of winter calving or whatever, but by and large, to spring calving, grass-based systems. And the whole idea is to make use of our competitive advantage, which is grazed grass. And I suppose to make really good use of it, then we want to calve compactly in the spring, put them back in calf compactly in early summer, and then drying off kind of before Christmas. So fertility really has a big part to play in our production system, our seasonal calving production system. And um, I suppose the two big things really, one is the days in milk. So if we can calve down compactly, we get good long days in milk, which is going to obviously is very important for production. And the other thing about fertility then, if we have good fertility, hopefully we'll be able to retain animals from lactation to lactation, which will lead to good herd maturity and again, big impact on production. So these are just so this is the data that comes into us through the handheld via ICBF. So just to give you a flavour, I suppose, of what the breeding season looks like for us down in Munster. So you can see and this is 24 and 25, and you can see there's a trickle of AI all year really, with the big peak kind of starts the middle of April, and there's a big peak for a week or so, and it actually dies off quick enough. And I suppose the fact that it's dying off is probably a good sign in that cows are generally going calf fairly well. And again, just for a little bit of context and to give you an idea, I suppose, where the country is at as regards cows going calf. So this is a bit of work that ICBF done last year, looking at 2023 dairy first inseminations in both heifers and cows for conventional semen and for sexed semen. And you can see the average for conventional there, just over 65% for heifers, about 5% less for sexed. And in cows, it's about 57% and about 7% less for sexed. So this is pregnancy rate data. So this is 2023 first inseminations verified by 2024 calving. So big numbers and accurate data. So they're the average pregnancy rates across the country to first insemination. So then I suppose I said I'd kind of start where we are now in the production cycle. And in most dairy farms now, cows are, I suppose, either in the transition period, which is the kind of the 3 weeks coming up to calving and the 3 weeks after calving, or they're going to be coming into the transition period fairly soon. And we all know it's probably the biggest challenge in a cow's production cycle is the calving and getting back into milk production, and trying to avoid all the various pitfalls along the way. So the 3 weeks coming up, she's a full grown calf or nearly a full grown calf inside in her. So there's a fair energy demand from that calf. Then you have the whole stress of calving, trying to regulate calcium metabolism and then recover after the calving. And of course, milk production takes off, and there's going to be the challenge of trying to meet the energy demands of milk production. So a big challenging period. And I suppose you could define really the way I break them up as metabolic, which is your energy balance, your calcium, the immunity. Again, the energy is in there in the calcium, but also I suppose retained fetal membranes, stress feeds into it. And then the whole social dynamic of kind of moving through the shade around calving time. So especially for heifers, some mixing of groups, feed space, line space, and all that leads to stress and pressure on the immune system again. So challenging time for the dairy cow. So looking at the negative energy piece then, so it's when a cow calves, generally I suppose their dry matter intake is maybe 12, 13, 14 kilos around coming up to calving. And then after calving, obviously, milk production takes off. So their energy requirement here in blue increases quite quickly. But their energy uptake, which is largely dependent on their dry matter intake, is that bit slower to take off. So it generally takes about 8 weeks before they're at peak kind of dry matter intake. And that gap then between intake and output causes this negative energy. So they actually go into negative energy and they start, I suppose, milking off their back. So using their own body, using their own reserves, their own body fat to fuel some of that milk production. And they're actually able to handle that remarkably well. So they'll drop a bit of condition, they'll milk off their back a little bit, but generally it's no bother to them. But obviously, if it's excessive, that can cause negative consequences. And I suppose one of the big pitfalls really when it comes to having cows prepared for calving is over-conditioned cows. Fat cows are really get off to a very bad start because they tend to be poor to eat before calving, and that leads to maybe negative energy even before calving, and they're generally poor to eat after calving. So even if they look fine, they can actually be burning a lot of fat, which can lead to ketosis, fatty liver, and excessive body condition loss. The other big ones then, I suppose, is actually underfeeding relative to output. So allowance of the feed of silage, of grass, whether they're in or out. So the actual quantity and also their ability to graze it. So feed space, a big one there. And obviously other ailments then, other metabolic diseases, lameness, infections, acidosis, maybe from concentrates gone in too quickly. So any of them are going to suppress intakes as well. If the cow is out of sorts, she's not going to be out and eating. So that can actually lead to more negative energy balance as well.
The big thing there, Dennis, I suppose too, is that if you go back there and look at like where cows, where you say like grass allowance, like I suppose it's extremely important to try and get that balance between, everyone is trying to like graze tight for the first round and not waste grass, but I'd say it's nearly better to work backwards. Allocate too much and see what they eat, and then start reducing them nearly out when they get out to grass, because it's nearly worse if they don't have enough and they're been pinched, and then that's has a worse effect, I suppose, from a negative energy balance point of view. Like it's nearly to over allocate and work backwards.
Absolutely, yeah,
Yeah,
absolutely, and I suppose going into the right covers as well, isn't it? That
yeah, yeah,
their appetite isn't going to be massive, so going into
yeah.
probably the
Lower
same
coverage,
need
yeah, exactly. Yeah.
low covers and that they're able to graze them out and work from there. And I suppose the other thing then is to try and get the concentrates up fairly quickly because their dry matter intake is low starting off. So their ability to take in forage, grass and silage is going to be low, but they will be able to take in, as the name suggests, concentrates. So to try and get them up fairly quickly. And then as more grass comes into the diet, the concentrates can drop off. So I suppose trying to front load the concentrates. Would that be your message, Niamh, is to try and
Yeah.
front load the concentrates and then drop them off? And
Oh yeah.
yeah,
Feed in the spring.
yeah.
Don't try and save money on meal in springtime.
And I
Summertime
know
is
you're
the
going to be
time
talking about
to do that.
Yeah, you're talking about genetics later on, and I suppose we were chatting about the base change before we kind of came on, and like there's been brilliant progress, you'd say, in the last 10 years as
Massive,
regards
yeah.
genetics and EBI, and like base change kind of reflects that with the percentage fat and the percentage protein now of the base cow. But these
Yeah.
cows, yeah, their their
They're
genetics
eating
has
well.
improved big
Mm.
time, but they need to be fed to realize that
Oh
potential
yeah.
as well, you know.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah. No, don't pinch in the spring anyway. Whatever
absolutely.
about, having lots of grass in summertime and reducing it back, but feed her
Yeah.
well in the spring because it's gonna have a knock-on effect when you come into breeding time. And
So the next slide there, I suppose the religion of body condition score often preached but rarely practiced, and I'm not going to go preachy about it either. But um, what I said about having the cows in the correct condition at calving is very important. So avoid not having them thin, but equally not having them over conditioned. So that kind of 3 to 3.25. So a nice conditioned cow. And I suppose from a fertility point of view, then ideally we want them arriving at the breeding season with not too many cows, so less, not the minimum amount of cows after dropping below 275. And there's lots of work showing that if they lose more than half a body condition, it really impacts their conception rates during the breeding season. So again, the fat cow might arrive at the breeding season at 275, but she could be after losing 3/4 of a body condition, and she'll struggle to go back and calf. And then, of course, the big things to watch there now as we head into the spring, PP9, the protein content in the bull tank, a good indicator of energy balance, and the lactose to a degree as well. But I suppose the protein is the one most people are more familiar with monitoring. So this is just a little slide, just looking at kind of what we were talking about there, Niamh, six, in by night and out by day. So I'll say 6 kilos of grass, 6 kilos of silage, 6 kilos of meal after we're talking about the first week on here, and the impact of the silage quality. So really, I suppose the whole idea here is to try and have good quality silage for the milking cows. That it's it does make a big difference to intakes, and it does make a big difference to their energy balance. So look, I think we've spoken a good bit about what we need to do already. So I can nearly skip on this slide, but to really trying to minimize that, so building up the concentrates fairly quickly. And as we were talking about there, trying to maximize the forage, whether it is grass or good quality silage, so to get them as well fed as possible to try and minimize that negative energy balance.
just with the body condition score, so I'm just thinking if there's anyone out there now and they're thinking, oh God, there's 2 or 3 cows there now that are really thin coming to calve in the next 2 weeks. Would I be right in saying or wrong in that there's not a whole pile you could do with them now, being so close to calving? Is it you're more for breeding, you're addressing that after in the terms of maybe like, once a day or whatever different practices people use, like feeding them meal now, you're at nothing really, are you?
We're talking about cows that are over conditioned before calving,
No,
is it?
no, too thin.
Or too thin before calving.
Mm.
Yeah. Um, those cows, I wouldn't be against feeding them something pre-calving if cows are too thin. So
Is it too
sometimes
late now, or are you still like saying if they're calving the next few weeks?
I
Yeah.
wouldn't say it is. I wouldn't say it
Okay.
is. Yeah, if they're struggling for
Okay.
body condition now, um, 2 kilos of a kind of a pre-calving ration, even something
Okay.
simple like oats and a bit of soya, is not going to do them any harm. I think it's only going to help them.
Okay.
Even as regards colostrum quality for the likes of them cows, um, and at least if they're transitioned in with some concentrates, you can kick them off straight away, maybe in 4 kilos in the parlor, and they're able to get going quicker. So
So,
I wouldn't say so.
Sorry,
right.
Dennis. I might just, you've covered a lot of information there so far. We might just see if does anybody else have any questions before we move on, just because I'm conscious there's a lot of good detail after coming in there. Or is everybody happy to move on? Yep. I'd say you can go on there, yep.
And equally, the cow that's over conditioned, like the temptation there might be to restrict her before calving, which is not a good thing to do either, because she's going to be struggling for dry matter intake, those over conditioned cows. So the last thing you want to do is restrict her and kind of shove her into negative energy balance. So So kind of ironically, she's a candidate maybe to give a bit of feeding to as well to help her transition, the overconditioned cow. But I suppose the real ones to watch out for now are the late calvers, so to manage them now so that they're not going
Yeah.
to be overconditioned in March. So a bit about calcium, which is obviously a huge thing to get right in dairy cows during the spring. So low calcium, hypocalcemia we're talking about. So from the cow that's going down to milk fever, which can be often the tip of the iceberg, to the cow that's appears normal but going around that bit low in calcium. So the two big things with calcium is number one, muscle function. The muscles need calcium, and the immune system, the immune cells require calcium. So if they're low in calcium, you've decreased muscle function, you've decreased immune function. And there's a whole cascade of, I suppose, it's like a gateway disease, milk fever, that there's a whole cascade of other things. So the gut isn't going to be working right, or they're not going to be taking in feeds. So that's going to maybe lead to negative energy balance. If the rumen isn't filled, you increased risk of displaced stomachs. Obviously, you've reduced milk yield, and you might have slow calvings if they're, or even cows not able to calve if they're low in calcium. And then the immune function piece, the big one there is retained afterbirths or even metritis. Even if they do clean, they can end up with metritis. Obviously, a big impact on fertility as well. And even the mastitis, so the muscle and the end that works the teeth, and the teeth end to, and the sphincter there to kind of seal up the teeth, maybe half an hour after milking, they're low in calcium, that's not working right. So increased chance of bacteria getting up, and equally then the immune system. So there's a whole cascade of different things that can go wrong in any kind of combination, really, if cows are struggling for calcium after calving. So the preventative piece, body condition is important. So over-conditioned cows are more at risk of milk fever. I suppose our big preventative strategy in Ireland is actually magnesium supplementation. So trying to get the diet up to 0.4% magnesium, which generally means getting about 30 grams of magnesium in through the pre-calving mineral. What kind of another impact? It's hard to keep the silage low in K, but high K silage increases the risk. It binds up to magnesium, and there's a higher risk. So then another prevention is maybe adding brown limestone or adding some source of calcium after calving. And even if you're still struggling with the magnesium piece, the likes of magnesium chloride flakes or some other kind of anionic salts. So there is other strategies there, but for most people with reasonable K silage or kind of normal K silage, the magnesium is good enough to prevent. So therapy then, if a cow is low, if a cow is down, or if a cow you think is a bit low, or if she's a high suspect, mature kind of cows, Jersey cows are more susceptible to it. And I just said I'd put up this graph because I think this is interesting as regards the argument between the bottle and the bolus. So if we just follow this, the hours after calving, so this is IV calcium now, but any kind of injection even under the skin is going to be kind of similar. So if you give 2 bottles of calcium, you get this big spike in calcium. That's brilliant. Cow gets up maybe, or if she's a bit wobbly, she recovers. But the problem with that big spike then is that triggers the cow, triggers this hormone called calcitonin. That the cow thinks, jeepers, I have too much calcium. I need to shut down my metabolism of calcium. So she stops pulling calcium out of her bones, and she can actually 24 hours later she could be gone quite low. So she kind of rebounds back down lower maybe than she was before. So she can go back down, or she can start showing symptoms again. So obviously if a cow is down, she needs to be treated in this manner and got up. But if we compare that then to the bolus, which is in blue here, so you don't get the peak, but you get a longer, and because you don't get the peak, you don't get the rebound with the calcitonin, You get this longer duration of calcium. So I suppose the message is, if a cow is treated with a bottle, it's always good to follow up with a bolus. So to try and avoid the rebound, that she'll get a source, that she'll have a source of calcium for the next 24 or 48 hours. And if a cow is standing, chances are she doesn't need the bottle, and often the bolus is the better option because you don't get that rebound effect. So I suppose another big disease then, or big problem that can affect, if it arises during the calving season, have a big effect on subsequent reproductive performance, and that's retained fetal membranes. So look, you can have the individual or you can have the herd. Individual often happens, twins, difficult calvings, etc. And the herd then really is anything that compromises immunity. So anything that compromises immunity can cause cows to hold on to their cleaning. And the three big ones are calcium, as we mentioned previously, very important for immune function. Negative energy. So if they're low in energy, their immune system is going to be firing as it should. And then if they're short of antioxidants, the likes of selenium and vitamin E. And I suppose a lot of these oxygen-free radicals are released around the time of calving. And if there's not enough antioxidants present to mop them up, it can cause problems with cows wholly onto cleaning. So just to be aware, if cows are starting to hold on to cleanings, it can be any one of these three things that cause a problem with immunity. How are we doing for time, Niamh? Because I can skip on a little bit. We're kind of...
I'd say, yeah, you're going okay. I'd say. I don't know,
No,
Niamh,
I
what do you
think
think?
you're okay, Dennis. Yeah, you're fine.
Yeah.
Yeah, keep going.
So look, I'll skip on a little bit. This is just a little bit about the social part. So we kind of covered the energy and covered maybe some of the metabolic stuff. This is just to, I suppose, looking at the stress and movement. So here's a couple of cows. So this is your fresh pen cows that are calved. This is your maternity ward, and this is your close-up cows. So this is probably more of a European style, but same principle applies to any kind of a calving system, really. So a couple of cows calved, cow moved in from the close-up. She's not actually going to calve at all. We put her back out again. A couple more cows calve. A couple more cows calve. So I suppose what we're trying to illustrate here is the best approach, rather than kind of piecemeal movements, is to calve as many as you can out of the calving, maybe the group calving area, and then kind of restock in one foul swoop. So you're avoiding all these itty bit movements and the stress of continuous movement. Whereas if you can kind of stock up fairly well, calve a good lot of them out of it, and then restock is the better approach. And then restock your close-up area again. So I suppose as we move on then, the actions for April, or the actions before mating start date. So we've spoken about these cows that had maybe trying to prevent these problems during the spring, but inevitably there's going to be some few cows have problems. You're always going to have something. So these are the cows really that you want to target, maybe for a vet exam, well in advance of the breeding season. So especially the cows maybe that are potentially have an infection or a metritis, to try and find those cows.
Sorry,
And
Dennis. I just see a question came in there just because it was close to the boluses there. Just how does the likes of Reviva compare to calcium boluses?
so Reviva, the drench, so like there would be magnesium, calcium, phosphorus in those drenches. And yeah, I'd say by and large they're good. They're going to be helpful to the cow, but I don't think they have the same concentration of calcium as the boluses. The boluses are designed just to give that long-lasting dose of calcium into the rumen, if you like, that'll last for a prolonged period of time and get them over that hump of the first 24 or 48 hours after calving. The drenches, like the Reviva, they will give calcium, but you probably won't get the same residual effect as the bolus, I would say. So yeah, look, two approaches, and I suppose I'd be a big fan of trying to keep good records as we're coming into the spring now, to keep good records. So any cow that has any kind of an issue, to try and record it. I suppose our own Farm Ops app is one of the things. If you record health events, even if they don't get treatment during the spring, it populates the problem cow report in just before the breeding season. So the list of cows that you should be checking. And the other approach then, if you don't keep the records, or if you had a good few issues during the spring, the other approach is the blanket approach. So maybe get the cow scanned or metri checked to try and find those cows um, well in advance of the breeding season, so you can treat them and hopefully give them a good fighting chance. The pre-breeding heat detection, I suppose the whole idea here is you're trying to find the cows that aren't cycling, so find the non-bullers. And I suppose one tip there, if you're going tail painting 3 or 4 weeks before mating start date, it is a great, I think, well worth running the clippers. Maybe clip the tails while you're at it, but run the clippers up over the rump, because it just allows you to apply a nice, neat strip of tail paint that's going to be easily rubbed off, and you want it to be rubbed off, so you want to know if these cows have been bully or not. And as we come into the breeding season, then I suppose it's just about deciding on your heat detection aids or your method of heat detection. So we spoke about the tail paint, works very well in cows, especially in the first 3 to 6 weeks, depending on the size of the herd. So plenty of activity that is going to be rubbed off. I suppose we'd be a big fan of the scratch cards then in heifers and in cows, especially smaller herds of cows. They're that bit easier to rub off, and I suppose they don't have to be topped up like tail paint. Crayons work very well indoors, and you can use them with the scratch cards and heifers. So it just maybe helps avoid the kind of ambiguous card that you're not sure is it rubbed or not. If the scratch or if the crayon is there, it's just another method of heat detection, the kind of belt and braces approach. Obviously, the vasectomized bull is very useful when activity drops off and very useful in heifers. And then obviously the technology, as we were talking about earlier on, is a huge advantage in herds now as regards, especially getting the timing right. The vaccines then, I mentioned the herd health program we have. So this is an example of a herd, a report that goes out to the farmer 4 times a year. So we do this for about 3,000 bull tanks, and they're the diseases we test for. So I suppose the ones that really are important for fertility, the likes of the lepto, and the likes of the IBR, to have them and the BVD in some cases, to have your vaccines up to date anyway, in advance. A lot of people now do them during the dry period, which I'd be a fan of, trying to get them in when cows are at their ease during the dry period, but certainly get them in well in advance of the breeding season, 4 weeks beforehand, so that you're not too close to the breeding season. So I have a few more slides on sex semen and things, but I'm kind of aware of time, and sure we could always come back to them if we wanted. I might, will I halt there, Niamh, and leave Niamh Lynch maybe go through the sire advice and all that, and sure if there's questions about sex semen, we can always have a few slides on sex semen and synchronization. Sure, if we have time or if there's interest, we can have a look.
Yeah, we can loop back to that. Yeah, Dennis, that's perfect.
So
you stop
we'll
sharing
there. Sure. We can always take a few questions or whatever if needs be.
Will you just stop sharing your screen there, Dennis?
I will, of course.
Thank you. No.
Stuff. Is that okay?
Yeah. Will you just
great.
give us a bit of an introduction there to yourself, Niamh, now?
Oh, great. Okay. So yeah, my name is Niamh Lynch, and I'm a dairy advisor in Roscommon Longford, in Teagasc in Roscommon Longford. So look, I suppose I just want to go through some of the decisions for improving genetics in the herd, and I've kept it really simple, to be honest. Like I could go through this all night long with ICBF and sire advice and how we got there, and yeah, there's a whole ream of stuff we could go through, but I wanted to leave it really simple so that when you get off the call, you open up the bull catalogue that's after coming through the door from any of the AI companies. What should you look for? Because it can be quite complicated and the science behind it all, but they're the few things I want to go through. Why we put the effort in, cow selection, bull selection, and just a few things on the base change, but nothing that's going to hopefully confuse you. If you have any questions, stop me through, or you can ask me at the end. I have no issue either way. So yeah, look, I suppose why should we put in the effort to this? And if anyone wants to jump on and answer, you seem kind of quiet, but if anyone wants to come in and answer, like why should we put in the effort to this? Why don't we just pick the 5 first bulls in the catalogue that comes in and forget about it?
Did I answer that?
So yeah, go on, Niamh.
Give me a good milk check at the end of the month, is it, Niamh?
Okay, great. Profitability. Wonderful.
Profitability, yeah.
We've won anyway. Uh yeah, so I suppose look, there's a few things, and there's probably others that I haven't even thought of. I suppose look at it, it's the next generation herd that you're going to see in the next, I suppose, 5 to 6 years. They're going to end up being mature animals in the herd. That you wanted them to be good and deliver something that's going to, leave profit on the farm. So I suppose, yeah. The other thing is, I suppose, the workload of rearing calves. There's a massive workload in rearing calves. It takes, from you put in the straw into your cow to get that calf and have her in the parlour, it takes an awful long time. So, and in springtime, you all know what's ahead of you now. It doesn't happen without early mornings, late nights, colostrum, the whole work. So there's a good workload in rearing calves. They should be good genetics and animals that are going to return something to the farm. So the next thing is profitability. Look, there's a massive link there. I'm sure you all know this between the EBI and profitability, and the higher EBI herd we have, the more profit that it'll return you. Yeah, and labour, this going back a bit to, I suppose, rearing the calves, but it does also, what I mean here is that, the higher EBI herd you have, the less problems you should encounter in terms of, if you're breeding for better health in terms of somatic cell count and, all that sort of stuff, you should, it should be reducing the labour that you're putting into rearing the animals. And then, yeah, look, and I'm probably leaving out something. If anyone wants to jump in, fire ahead. But yeah, look, the big thing is that these are going to be animals you'll be milking hopefully in the next number of years. You want to put the effort in by picking the bulls and getting the right stock on the ground. So yeah. Okay, this is just something to think about before the breeding season. How many dairy straws should we buy? I see it at work all the time. There's like an awful pile of people using a lot of dairy straws, whether it just be fear that, the breeding season isn't going to go well. But in turn, they're left with an awful lot of heifers on the ground. And I just want look at some people have reasons for doing that, but there is a massive cost to rearing calves and getting them to calve down. So don't underestimate that cost. It's not always seen. You're not forking out for it. It's, people that are contract rearing would actually see that a bit more because it's like they're paying for them to be contract reared. Whereas when you're rearing them yourself, you're not seeing that cost, but there is a big cost to it. So just be aware, I suppose, how many, you need for the to replace into your herd. The replacement rate is another thing. So what is your replacement rate? It should be somewhere between 18 and 20. Some people are sitting at 22. Just have a look at that and see how many you actually need. I might just share this straw calculator that's very handy. Really quick, Niamh, sorry. So I'm just going to stop this. It's a very good calculator. I have it here, yeah. And share. Okay, yeah. So this just basically, it's a calculator. Just move you out of the way. It's a calculator basically to calculate how many straws you need. So if you're going, I'll just do an example. So say you're going with you have 20 heifers and you're giving them all one sex straw. So you can change this also if you like, this conception rate. I'll just leave it at 60%. So if you have 20 heifers, 60% conception, and they all get a sex straw, you'll get nearly 11 heifer calves, 10 heifer calves out of them heifers. So you're not going with any conventional straw, you're going straight to beef after that. And we'll just say then you're going with say 30 sex straw, we'll go say 20 sex straws on the cows, and we'll go 10 conventional straws. So if that's the case, you're getting 23 heifers. So that'd be on a 100 cow herd, that'd be 23 heifer calves, 23% replacement rate. So that it would be high. And that's using 40 sex straws in total and 10 conventional. So that's 20 with the heifers and 30 in total with the cows, 20 sexed, 10 conventional. You can do that whatever which way. Some people don't use conventional with the cows, some people use conventional with the heifers. I'm not saying which way to do it, but just as an example. And then also, obviously, that's with your cows. You have a 50% conception rate with sexed semen and 60% on the cow conventional. So it's just interesting to see like 30 straws on a herd of 100 cows, dairy straws seems low. But with the sexed and using the 10 conventional, you will actually get 12 from your cows and then obviously your 10 with the heifers. So just be aware of that. Like you don't need to go buying 50 and 60 dairy straws for a 100 cow herd. People are ending up with a lot of heifers and they can be quite hard to get rid of. So yeah,
There's
I
just
just
a
want
question. There's a question in there, Niamh, saying, is there a rough figure on what it costs the farmer when they rear too many heifers? Or do you have?
to. Well, you see, it depends, to be honest, Niamh. Not really, because it depends on the outlet for the heifer. So they could be rearing them and selling them. If they're selling them and getting what they reared for them, that's fine. But if they don't, they could be they could be losing out, you know. So they mightn't be necessarily getting it fully back. But there is a cost. There is a cost if they're rearing them and putting them into their own herd. So say you're rearing 25% replacement rate and they are coming back into the herd and you're getting rid of older cows. That there is a cost on that, and I don't have the figure at the top of my head, but it will be that the idea really is that the older the herd gets, the more mature the herd gets, the better. Because the more younger cows you bring in, the less kilos of milk solids they're going to be produced, and that's a cost in turn. That's why you want the replacement rate. Otherwise, we'd have all heifers all the time. But the idea is that you've roughly 18 to 20%. And then, yeah, that's where the cost comes in. If they're rearing too many, just rearing in general. But that's where the issue lies, really, to be honest, is that you'll never get to a mature herd. And
And do you see any other issue? Like, so say we're just free of TB, but
oh, yeah.
this one year we lost 36 cows, like that'll be below. How do you manage that? Do you
I
always
know.
give a margin of error to, or
Sure, I know the situation you're in, and it's a hard one to say, Niamh, to be honest, because you could be free of it, you could have it this year and be free of it for 10 years, so it's hard to rear them. And I know people don't like buying them in. I would be a bit more. I don't know what the answer is, to be honest with you, Niamh. Um, yeah, I don't know if it's a thing you don't think you're going to get clear of. You probably would rear more and sell some of them. The issue is I suppose, there's no problem if you thought you were going to be down having more heifers and rearing them if you had an outlet to let them go. It's when they keep coming back and back into the herd when there's no need for them is really the problem. So yeah, but I know the situation. Yeah, it's hard to not have them then when you need them when you're losing cows. But it's yeah,
yeah.
go back to
I
this.
suppose the one thing, Niamh, is that nationally, um, the country overall was kind of struggling for replacement heifers the last couple of years, wasn't it? That people probably weren't producing enough heifer calves.
Yeah, they weren't. Yeah.
Yeah,
Oh, that's it. They weren't. Yeah. But I think that's nearly gone at the minute now. Like there's nearly too many.
yeah. There was certainly a lot more dairy semen used when we saw it anyway last year. And I suppose the other thing
Yeah.
is the wastage. Like you kind of need, like, you might want to be at 20%, but you probably need a few extra because they're not all.
Oh, definitely. Yeah.
Yeah,
You'll always lose if you, yeah, yeah, yeah.
yeah,
Yeah. And like ones that maybe calved down and you might lose them then or whatever. Yeah. Yeah. Um, but yeah, in a general sense, I suppose, just not to be reaching too high or up at maybe 30% or that.
yeah.
Um, yeah. So yeah, just on the cow selection, okay, so we're going to start breeding now in May. How are we deciding, I suppose, what cows we should breed from and what cows shouldn't we breed from? Look, maybe not everyone is doing that, and just a comment on that. Like, I suppose in the last number of years, I've experienced a lot of people that have, changed up what they've done in terms of say they used to breed the whole herd to dairy, and not use any beef at all, and that's changing, I think, in that they're selecting now what they're breeding from. They're not just going with a dairy straw from the get-go. You could have the first cow that comes into the crush could be getting, for breeding, could be getting a beef straw, and so they should. So I suppose how do we know that she's a good cow and that I'm breeding her because she's my good cow? What defines that? I suppose, and that's what it'd be a good idea to have a look at that before you start breeding. And I suppose some of the few things that I would look at, or that I think you should look at, would be if you're milk recording, you should be looking at your milk recording data. So your kilos of milk solids, your protein, and your fat. And it's quite easy on ICBF, if you have milk recording data, to go in and look at, just rank the whole herd uh, on protein and on fat. See what your highest is, see what your lowest is, and just select out the ones that have been high on protein and fat, over the last number of years. You'll get them on your annual reports. The same with kgs of milk solids. Look at, there should be no cow bred really that's not hitting at least 450 kilos of milk solids in third lactation. First and second lactation, it's very hard to be harsh on them, because they're really only getting to maturity. But if they're not at least at 450 kilos of milk solids in third lactation, I wouldn't be breeding off them, for whatever reason that they didn't achieve it. The other one then is your EBI. So look within that in the traits of the EBI, I suppose, to see what different cows, how they're ranked within the herd, to decide whether they should be bred from or not. And then health traits, like Dennis was saying in his presentation, recording now over the next few months of what's happening. And I suppose this could even be in the past, like, you all have cows where you'd say, oh, that one gets lame every year, or she always gets mastitis in the spring, or temperament might be an issue as well with her. Don't be holding on to them if they're constantly causing problems, and I mean that as in constantly. Like, I don't mean that if she gets mastitis once, like, let her off. But if they're constantly causing problems, mark them for culling. So yeah, and then so look at them kind of things in your herd. And then I suppose the other thing was, the first thing there is, why should we breed a certain type of cow in our herd? So just be aware of what you actually want to achieve going forward in terms of, the actual cow type you want in the herd. And really it should be that she's fertile, goes back in calf, and converts grass to profitable milk. And by that I mean that it's driven by percentage of fat and protein. And again, that's what we're paid on. We're paid on fat and protein and kgs milk solids, not water. So yeah, just be aware of that, I suppose, and just a few things around the cow selection. I suppose the simplest thing you could do there is just get an annual recording, maybe print it off, or if you're used to looking at ICBF, go in an ICBF and try and pick maybe 20 or 30 cows that you think deserve a dairy straw. Because I've seen it actually before, where if you put the best bull on a middling to poor genetic cow, you're still going to have a middling calf. It makes a big difference. Like, I've seen that happen before. Put all the effort into selecting good bulls, and then put these bulls then onto cows that really shouldn't be getting it. And shouldn't be getting it, I mean, by, we want our crop of calves to be an excellent crop of calves. Yeah. So yeah, so just on the bull selection, so look, there's been, I'm sure a lot of you are probably looking at bulls for the last number of years, and with the base change, it's quite confusing. So I don't know whether any have pens close by, but if you want to take these down, these figures down, these are the few things that, well, few, there's probably more than a few, but anyway, these are the things that when I would open up a catalogue to look at bulls, these are the things I would be looking at. So it's changed obviously with the base change. There used to be different figures. Base change, by the way, it's a really positive thing. It means that we've improved in terms of genetic performance over the last, say, 10 years. And yeah, it's really positive. It means that the herd is improving. The national herd is improving. So yeah, in terms of kilos of milk solids, so combined kilos of milk solids I'm talking about, so fat and protein combined, I would be looking at 20 kilos combined between the two. So on a protein percentage, I'd be looking at 0.13 for protein. So 0.13 for protein is 4% on the ground. That's a 4%. So if your herd um in EBI, your overall herd was at 0.13 for PTA for protein, that means your herd has the potential to deliver 4% for fat, or for protein, sorry. And 0.23 for fat. So 0.23 for fat, again, if that was your herd average, your herd would have the potential to deliver 5% fat. So that's 9% combined solids. So it will be exceptional. Milk. So by milk, I mean the milk sub-index of milk. You're looking at €60 there of minimum. Fertility, €70. Health, €7, and maintenance, 29. So just before I go on to the last one, so if you look at them 7 things, and every bull that you select for breeding this year has them 7 things, you won't go far wrong. You'll have a super team of bulls. Um, I've, I had this debate before, a discussion group up in Meath where it was, some of the lads said, but what about this? And what about this figure? And what about this figure? And if you were to pick every figure that's on the EBI and pick, the lowest you wanted to go, there'd be no bull in the AI catalogue to match every single parameter. So they're the really important ones. Milk, fertility, the balance there between milk fertility, so that's milk 60, fertility 70. You want to drive high protein and fat. Your 20 kilos combined solids, and your health €7, and your maintenance. So I'll show you a slide on maintenance at the end. It has changed a bit as well. People kind of get fixated a bit on maintenance, and it has changed. We always kind of would have said nice size cow was like €18, whereas that's kind of moved now, and it's 80. What was €18, the old is now 29. Where your milk kg figure then, so where that was 0, it is now minus 70. So from this base change, over 60% of herds in the whole country have their milk sub-index, their milk kg figure, sorry, has moved to a minus figure. Don't fear that minus figure. If I was to change one thing in the whole EBI is to move that milk figure, because the minus just fears people and they think that it's going to, deliver them less milk. And I'll show a slide in a few minutes on an worked example. That minus milk figure does not mean that you're going to deliver less milk. And that I know that's hard to get your head around, but it's not. So as what 0 used to be, so minus 70 used to be, was 6,247 liters of milk in third lactation. And that's a lot of milk. That's over the national average. So don't, at minus 70, there is plenty of milk in the herd. What you need to drive on after that is your fat and protein, and what will have more of an effect is this 20 kilos of combined milk solids and your milk sub-index. Any questions on that? Maybe. Very good.
Yeah, happy.
Okay, so this is just an example of on the movie on the minus milk PTA. So you can see it here, right? So you have 3 different cows. The first one, for example, is 246 of an EBI. Her milk sub-index is 87, but her milk PTA is minus 51, and she delivered 5,000 litres. So if we just hop down to the next cow, 93 kgs in milk, so more milk, 6,000 litres she delivered, and then again, way more milky cow, 397 kilos of milk. So lots of milk. And she delivered 7,000 litres. But when you look at it across, if you go across here, right, so their fat and protein, kilos of milk solids delivered. The cow with minus 51 delivered 496, and then the next two, five the same. They were 500 kgs of milk solids. But when you look at that, using the current milk price and the A plus B minus C system, when you look at the bottom line here, the total value A plus B minus C, the cow with the less litres produced more because it's driven by her solids. You can see the big difference there in protein and fat. It's driven by her percentages, fat and protein. And you can see there's a big difference from the cow with the more milk. She actually has way less protein. She's over 1%, 1 full percent behind the top cow. So I hope that makes sense, but just the bottom line is do not fear that minus figure. And as I said, 60% herds are now in the minus. It has very, very little correlation on what's delivered on the ground. And yeah, so the last one is just that I want to bring to your attention is this maintenance sub-index. Sorry, now 1 second. The maintenance sub-index, so where that used to be, so where the old one was, we'll say 16, we'll take to 16, for example, that's now 29. So that €29 for maintenance is a predicted live weight mature animal of 550 kgs. And there is actually a calculator on this on the ICBF website. You can just type in whatever yours is, or they actually have it the opposite way as well. You can type in what you want your animal to be. If you want them to be 580 kilos, you can type in 580 kilos and it'll work backwards and tell you what your maintenance should be in your herd. So yeah, that's just a quick slide there to show you the how it's changed. So yeah, so small cow, so €44, it'll be 525 kgs, and you can go further back from that. But so yeah, that's Niamh, that's me.
Can I ask, Niamh, just what would be your top three take homes to sit down now after we come off this or tomorrow? What are we doing?
Okay, let me see.
Sorry, curveball.
Look, just go back. No, look, just go back to the bull selection. I don't want to tell everyone to sit down and do a full. You should all sit down and do a full sire advice, which is a great tool, and I'm sure a lot of you do that anyway. But I would stick by this. Stick by that and you won't go wrong. And then the other thing I would say is try and have a look at the cows. If you can do it on ICBF, all the better. Look at the cows within your herd and decide which ones deserve a dairy straw. And they should be the ones that are delivering more kilos of milk solids from protein and fat percent. And that's really it, to be honest with you, Niamh. And ignore the milk figure. Ignore that milk kgs figure because it just fears people into thinking because it's a minus. Yeah, if you can get on and do a sire advice, great. All the better. But I'm sure any that have Teagasc advisors will give you a hand pulling together a sire advice.
I see a question there as well. Is the straw calculator available on the Teagasc website?
Oh no, but I can send it on and you can email it out, Niamh, to the group of people that
Yeah.
are here. It might be just easier than going looking for it.
Yep. If you send that on to me, I'll be able to
I'll
get
email it on. You can just email it out to everyone. Yeah.
Yep. Great. Thank you. Any other questions? Dennis, are you still there? Might just ask you for your 3 take homes as well if you're still there. Yeah.
Yeah. So obviously do what you can now to prevent any problems during the spring, but you're supposed to the time is running out for prevention as calves start dropping. But definitely keep good records anyway. I think it's worth writing down any cows, and even if you're walking the cubicles and you see a cow with a discharge, you can just write them down, um, and make a list that you can do something about in the spring. I suppose watch out for the late calving group. They can be a little bit forgotten, so to watch that they don't get over conditioned, and watch their minerals as well as time goes on. You can, I suppose, get a bit lax with the minerals. So they're a critical group that you want them to calve in trouble free and get going, because they're still a valuable group in the farm. Not all the cows can calve in February, so um, there's always going to be a proportion of late calvers. And yeah, I suppose coming up to breeding then, I suppose following on from what I said, take action on the cows that had problems. So get them checked out, get them treated. And I suppose something that I didn't mention then is the cows that are maybe struggling for body condition, 3-4 weeks out from breeding, or even the late calvers. That once a day milking is a super handy management tool to just reduce their output. Keep putting them through the parlour, keep feeding them twice a day. You'll drop their output, their input will stay the same, and they'll hopefully actually gain a little bit of condition, and come back cycling and hopefully go back and calf.
And then I see a question come in there. What guidelines would you advise when selecting heifers for breeding?
Yeah, so if you're happy, like I said, heifers can slip into the system and be not what we kind of want in terms of genetics. What I would say is if you're happy where the herd is, in terms of genetics, I wouldn't breed any heifer that's lower than your own genetics in your overall herd, if that makes sense, as an average. They'd want to be up there in terms of even the guidelines I gave there with fat and protein. That they are probably up there already with them genetics. So they wouldn't want to be lower than that. So you wouldn't want to be breeding a heifer that's lower than 0.23 fat. They should be, if you've been doing a really good job in terms of genetics, they should be there anyway. So yeah, I wouldn't go less. I wouldn't go less than that.
And then another question that was sent in was, what would be your opinion on New Zealand genetics that don't really use EBI?
Oh yeah, like LIC. Yeah, like lots of people are using bulls, New Zealand genetics. Yeah, if they're doing the job for your herd and delivering good, like, quality milk on the ground and kilos milk solids and going back and calf, yeah, no issue.
Any other questions there? I think we're bang on the clock. So we are. I suppose just to say a quick thanks to both Dennis and Niamh for popping on. We know some people might have their decisions done, and made it when it comes to it. But I think Dennis, you gave them really valuable information there for getting the cows into good condition before they go into breeding. So thanks so much from all in Dairy Women Ireland to you both for coming on, and we might have you back next year to tell you how well we did this year. So thanks a million, folks, and thanks everybody else for joining. Thanks a million.
Thank you.
Thanks everyone. Take care.